Hello and welcome to That Canon Guy's Reviews. Today I'll be doing an in-depth review and look over of my personal experience with the Canon EOS 40D, my personal camera, which is this camera right here. And on it, for just testing purposes, showing purposes, I have a Canon zoom lens EF 28 to 90mm f4 to 5.6 lens. So pretty much what I'll be covering in this review. First of all, I will be looking over just the body of the camera, then give you some personal advice on what I've found shooting with it for the last 6 months. And then also we'll go over all the menus, everything in depth, custom functions, and all that kind of stuff. Then I'll have some sample pictures at the end of different ISOs and some other stuff like that. Okay, so let's go right into it. Let's start with just looking around the body. So on the front, of course, you have the lens, which we're not really going to include in this review, so I'll just take that off for right now. So we pretty much just have the camera body, which has the Canon logo on there, EOS 40D logo, metal lens mount, little lens release pin, and button. Then you have the focusing screen holder up there, mirror. This is the whole mirror box right here, and then you have the lens contact pins. Also have the autofocus assist beam, and the shutter button, and battery grip, which really isn't on the front of the camera, the shutter button isn't. You have your depth of field preview button, and the flash pop-up button. And one thing to note about this camera, it is fully weather sealed, which is very nice when you're in just slight sprinkles, slight rain, something like that. I'll talk about that more in depth later. Then of course you have your PC Sync port for studio lighting, as well as PC Sync flash units, and also your remote controller. These are very nice and solid doors. You have their video out and digital in. More nice weather sealing on those doors there. Turning around to the side, you have a menu button. You have the print button and also a custom function button you can use as. And you have a playback, delete, jump, info, and creative modes, which I'll talk about more about those. Of course, you have your on-off switch there with 3 positions, which I'll talk about what those do later. Clicky spinny wheel thing with a set button in the middle, 5-way control pad. Then you have your autofocus on, which if you don't use the shutter button or in live view, you have your little autofocus point selection, and also the exposure lock switch, and your plus and minus, like in zooming in and playback. You have your eyepiece right here, which under you have the operator control. Of course, this thing has a full pentaprism, not any, or what is that called? I can't remember, but they have. Oh yeah, it's a full pentaprism. A lot of the cheaper Rebels today have the pentamirrors, which aren't quite as bright, but they are lighter. This is quite a heft of a camera. It's a bit heavier. I don't know, I don't have a scale here to weigh it, but it weighs a good amount. It feels pretty nice and it's very sturdy. Hey, and then you have the mode dial, which has all your standard auto modes, like no flash, night scene, night portrait. There's sports, which you can shoot up to 60 continuous frames at 6.5 frames per second, which is very fast. Then you have the macro mode, which you have to have a macro lens to use that. Landscape, portrait, auto, program, shutter priority, aperture manual, aperture dependent or depth or something like that. They select the aperture for you. Custom 1, Custom 2, and Custom 3, which is really nice, has 3 custom functions. Then you have your flash shoe there, hot shoe, and you have your light button for that. Of course, you have your plane of focus, this indicator right there, white balance, and this, what's called, the light metering modes, autofocus drive, ISO, and flash compensation, and your little clicky wheel up here, of course, the shutter button. On this side, you have your compact flash door, which is weather sealed, like I was saying there, and professional 300X 16 gig cards, what I use in this camera this time. Got it off eBay. And then you have your little info on the camera there, tripod socket, and have room for a wireless file transfer right there. Plugs in the bottom like a battery grip, which I have a review up on that. My battery grip I use with this, and you can see that. I swear. And you have your battery door and battery right here, BP511 or BP511A batteries, and CR 2016 3-volt battery slot right there. Okay, so that's pretty much just looking around the body of the camera. And I'll just give you a couple of technical specifications I know on it. I don't know all of them. But of course it has a pop-up flash, 10.1 megapixels, and has a 9-point autofocus system, I think 1 cross-type autofocus point, and it's all magnesium alloy body, 3-inch LCD, clear view LCD screen, no video recording. That's one thing you have to, they implement that into all the later models, and full weather sealing. That's one of the features. Like I've been in here, you can even mount a 580EX2 flash or some of the other ones like that to have full weather sealing around there. There's weather sealing there, and of course in the battery doors there's weather sealing there, and this is all weather sealed there, so if you want to keep that on there. And let's see, what else is there? It's just an overall 6.5 frames per second continuous shooting, I think around 3 to 4.5 per second with continuous autofocus, which is really nice too. And it's not UDMA card compatible as far as I can tell, so it's not gonna happen. Okay, so just a couple personal thoughts on the camera. It is extremely tough. This is just like the best build quality I've ever felt on any camera I've owned before. Very, very, very rugged. Magnesium alloy body is really nice. I bought it out of a couple of sprinkles and also running through a sprinkler a few times, and it works just fine. The weather sealing has not given way yet to any water getting into the camera, and overall it works great for anything I need to use it for. I mainly use it for studio work, for our eBay account, that_Canon_guy. Go check it out if you want to go buy some vintage, as well as new cameras, electronics, etc. We have 600 plus items listed, pretty much anything you could want. But anyway, and also I do just sports photography, just kind of for fun, and hopefully I can get into professional photography soon. I'm hoping to upgrade to a 5D Mark III within the next year, which is quite a big step up, and also L lens here within this year. And overall, like I said, I found it very rugged, works very well for what I use it for, and the 3-inch LCD is really nice for the live view, and also TV out, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so let's just look over some of the functions. It also has sensor cleaning, as you saw there. Look over some of the functions, what all these modes do, buttons. These are all the fully automatic modes. I won't really touch on those at all, except for the sports one. It's pretty nice. You can only shoot in JPEG in sports, by the way, but let's just do that. 6.5 frames per second, and when you put the lens on there, it dampers the sound a little bit. That sounds pretty loud. Here, turn off the autofocus. It's pretty fast. 6.5 frames per second is nothing to scoff at. Assuming since the 60D and the 50D, neither of them do that, and the new 5D Mark III only does 6 frames per second, so it's a very good camera for sports and that kind of photography. And then here you have program, which you pretty much can't set much. Little mode dials do nothing. Let me just check on these buttons here, but you have this metering mode, which you can have evaluative, spot metering, and a couple others there. Then also you have all your white balance options. Then you have your autofocus drive, which you can change it between high speed and not. I'll also put the lens on here so we can check out some of the stuff here. Then you can also have AI Servo, if you turn that on for continuous shooting. Glare here. Yeah. You have your little light button, lights up the screen. And for exposure compensation, you have to change it all the way up to this top thing here, and then you press down the shutter button halfway, and then you can change that. Let's see here. If I need to. Yeah. Oh, there you go. It changed. Okay. There you go. You can change the exposure compensation right there, but you have to be in this mode. Okay, then if you go into shutter priority, you can change the shutter speeds. Aperture, you can change the aperture. And if you notice, I shoot in RAW. Something you should research and highly consider doing. And in manual, you can change the shutter speed, but this wheel does not change the aperture. In that, you have to go back into this mode, and then you can change the aperture with the wheel. I was having a lot of problem with that right off the bat. Didn't know how to do it. Then also you can change the exposure compensation there. Okay, so let's change this. And then of course you have your aperture selection, where they automatically select the best depth of field. Then you have your custom 1, custom 2, and custom 3, which I really like, as you can have 3 custom functions, which for custom 1 I have for outdoor sports shooting and daylight, WAW, high speed with AI Servo, if you turn this on here, then ISO 400 and -2 exposure compensation, because you can correct that in Lightroom. Then for studio I have spot metering, one shot, 100 ISO, which this has an ISO range of natively from 200 to 1600, and then you can expand it down to 100 and up to 3200. And this one I just have set on that. And then this is for indoor sports, AI Servo, high speed, -2 exposure compensation, spot metering, and high ISO, which is 3200. Okay, so let's just look through a couple of these buttons down here. Playback, of course, goes in the playback, which does have that picture, which isn't really much. So then you have delete, jump, info. Info will show you a couple different, pick between 2 menus when you're in this kind of mode. You can look through your little options you have selected there. And of course you have the picture styles, which are very nice. I mostly only use monochrome for that, but you can also have 3 user-defined standards, as well as neutral, faithful, landscape, portrait, and standard, which is one of the nice little of that. And then you can, in the menu here, just look through the menu controls in, let's go into manual here so we can get the most of the menu controls. Get in on that. Okay, you have your quality, which you have also one nice feature is small RAW, which is like a 3 megapixel RAW. You have red eye, on or off, beep, shoot without card, review time, the works there. Automatic exposure bracketing, white balance, custom white balance shift bracketing, color space, picture style, and dust delete data. Just nice to have that. Protect images, rotate, erase images, print order, transfer order. Here, highlight alert, autofocus point display, histogram, and autoplay. And here you have auto power off, file numbering, auto rotate, info button, and format. Like I said, the info button you can change, be like a custom function button. Then here you have the LCD brightness, date and time, language, video system, sensor cleaning, which it has auto sensor cleaning, and the live view function settings, which in here you have live view shoot, grid display, silent shoot, which it has 2 modes, which are very useful, and metering timer. Here in flash control, you can go into the custom functions. You can set custom functions for all your different flashes and stuff if you have like a 580EX, 580EX2, 430, EZ. There's a lot of different flashes you can use with this. And here you have camera user setting, which saves your custom functions. So always make sure to do that once you set up your custom function. Go into here, click camera user setting, and register. Clear all camera settings and firmware version 1.0.8, which they have a newer one, but I'm fine with this version. Then, of course, you have all your custom functions, which I'll go over there in a minute after we're done with this menu. And quality, this is my menu here. You set whatever you want to be in your menu, whatever you use most often. Okay, so let's go into the custom functions. I'll just tell you a little bit about each of them and what they'd be used for. Just start off at the first one here. Exposure level increments, which you can either adjust to 1/3 stop or 1/2 stop. And that's pretty much just for adjust your exposure if you want it like choppier, like more or less. I like it at 1/3 stop because it's more range. And then also exposure ISO speed setting increments, either 1/3 stop or 1 stop, which I really like at 1/3 stop, so you can really have a good range on that. And also exposure ISO expansion, which I have on, which makes it go down to 100 and up to 3200. Then you have exposure bracketing auto cancel, exposure bracketing sequence, so you can change all this different kind of stuff here. Exposure safety shift, like in shutter priority and aperture priority, it will automatically adjust the exposure if it thinks it's too overexposed or underexposed. And here exposure flash sync, speed and audio in not audio, video. Confused, it's aperture priority mode, auto, or 1/250th of a second fixed. Go into here, then you go into image. You can have long exposure noise reduction, which I prefer to have it on auto. You can turn it on or off. And image high ISO speed noise reduction, I have that on. Image highlight tone priority, enable or disable. And also, if you have the image highlight tone priority, you cannot have the expanded ISOs on, so always make sure to disable that if you're going to want to use the expanded ISOs. Autofocus drive. Autofocus drive lens search when autofocus is impossible. Focus search on or focus search off. Autofocus drive, autofocus stop button function. And you can set all these different functions. Autofocus drive, autofocus point selection method, normal, multi-control direct, or the quick control dial direct, which is this or this. Moving through that. Autofocus drive superimpose display, on or off, which I prefer to keep that on. It goes in the viewfinder. It's the gets little dots that light up. Autofocus assist beam firing, enable. Autofocus during live view shooting, enable, which actually just means you can press the autofocus on button. It'll flip the mirror to focus and then flip it back up. Autofocus drive mirror lockup, which is first like extreme studio shooting. I don't use it. And there's that kind of stuff. And then operation other, shutter button, autofocus on button. Like if you press both at the same time, it'll have a function. Operation others, autofocus on, a lock button switch, disable or enable, which is this thing and this thing. Make them enabled or disabled. Then set button when shooting, normal, disabled, which just does whatever it's supposed to do, or some other functions there. And dial direction during shutter priority or aperture priority, you can make it go normal or reverse. Then operation others, focusing screen, which I have the EFS for manual focus lenses installed right now. I'll be doing a comparison video between the EFA and the EFS, what the difference is between the two after using it for a while. Then also add original decision data, which I have on. And live view exposure simulation, which I don't like that to be on here, because otherwise it automatically will expose according to it. With manual focus lenses, it just doesn't work that great, so I just keep it off. I rely on the light meter here, which is right down here. I'll show you live view here in just a minute. Okay, and then also clear all custom functions. Okay, and then of course, don't have much more there. Okay, so let's show you live view just quickly here. Live view, you have to, like I said, to autofocus, you have to press the autofocus on button, flip up the mirror. Once it autofocus is, then it will. Then you can take a picture if you want to. Shows up right there. And I usually watch this little exposure meter when using manual focus lenses, which I will have a tutorial on using manual focus lenses with adapters some other time. And then also you just have your ISO. You can adjust all your ISO settings and everything there. Some extra info if you need it. And you can bring up your little menu like over the everything there. Okay. So that's pretty much my pretty big overview of this camera after using it for a while. I really suggest the camera for anybody who has been using a point and shoot for a while and really wants to just get into a camera that can really is like a do-it-all camera. This is really good for most types of photography, unless you really need a ton of detail. 10.1 megapixels is plenty enough. And it also shoots RAW, which is a very good for editing, and the 6.5 frames per second is really quite a good frame per second rate. No other camera in the APS-C size sensor range does it except for the Canon EOS 7D, which is like leagues ahead of this camera. And then also, of course, the 1D series, like the 1D Mark III, 1D Mark IV, and you could even get a 1D Mark II and it does 8 frames per second, but this is top of the class for frames per second for this price range. You can usually pick these up on eBay. I got this one at a great deal for $215, I believe, with the box and everything, but they're usually had for around $400, so great deal compared to modern cameras, like other cameras that can record video and stuff. So if you don't need the video record feature, you want something that's an all-purpose camera, very easy to use in like the auto mode, then check this one out. And also, one thing I forgot to mention, the ISO image quality. I found that it gets pretty you can definitely notice the ISO starting at 800, which I'll have some samples shots here after the show. After this video, I'll just have them posted after this to show you what the different ISOs look like, and also just some sample images I shot of this. I shot thousands and thousands and thousands of images, tens of thousands, with this camera, and it is great. Okay, so this pretty much concludes my in-depth review of the Canon EOS 40D. If you have anything I forgot or want to ask a question, please do so in the comments below. Otherwise, always subscribe to my channel, press the like button, and also leave a comment, suggestion, question, anything you might have. Also, if you like older vintage cameras and other stuff like that, we have an extensive inventory, so send me an email in the comments, or put in the comments if you want a vintage camera reviewed, look it over, anything like that, we can do that. Okay, so again, thanks for watching.